Marvin Devine. I'm saying bye to all the lies and all the times you cried, saying that I wasn't right, yet I was right by your side. You manipulator, playing games, your friends commentators, and I don't know what you say about our private conversations, but it's got them hating. Thanks to all the rumors you be claiming. It's cool, I'm done with you, so they can throw you a celebration. You gon' hate it when you see me with somebody living better. I'm trying to tell you that me just doing me gon' have you jealous.
Welcome back, folks. Saturday, October 4th, 2025. I awoke in this morning to a New York Times article intentionally meant to incite fear in people. At least that's my analysis of the article. Whether that was their intent or not, that's what they're doing. This follows up a previous New York Times article that got a lot of refugee aspirants in South Africa very much up in arms and concerned about what was happening with the refugee program because they don't understand how the U.S. government works. What was happening with All right, so I want to make sure that was playing okay. So let me refer to that article a few months ago in which the New York Times claimed that an inside source had told them that President Trump would lower the refugee threshold from 125,000 set by the criminal Biden regime last year to just 40,000 this year. Then they also lied in the article stating that that would be reserved for white Afrikaners exclusively. That's what they said. I corrected that record and also told people to calm down for the following reasons. Then I'm going to talk about today's story. The report is a report, not a law, not an executive order, not anything legally binding. The report is required under the Immigration Nationality Act of 1980, forcing the executive branch, led by the President of the United States, to report to Congress annually information about refugee and asylum programs in America. Specifically, who entered the country in the previous year, how much money was spent, what was it allocated for, where did they come from, what conflicts, what regions, what countries, and what is your projection for the next year that you're going to allow into the country. Now, let me put this in perspective for you. The Biden regime, when Joe Biden cowardly destroyed years of sacrifice in Afghanistan and pissed on the graves of U.S. soldiers and civilians who died in that conflict by giving away the country to the terrorist, Joe Biden, when he did that, the U.S. government, either intentionally or out of guilt, brought 160,000 Afghans into this country in a matter of about 3 weeks. It was insane. They dumped them in our neighborhoods. Right around here, we've got them running around now, wearing their facial coverings. Brought them here. They were not in the annual report for that year. They exceeded the entire cap for the whole world, one country. And by the same token, Ukrainians, 300,000 Ukrainians have been relocated in my country, dumped in this country, exceeding the annual total allocation for Ukraine. So take a deep breath, lower the temperature in the room, ladies and gentlemen. This is a report, not a law, not an executive order, but the New York Slimes would have you believe that this will determine how many people are coming here. It's the plan, but we violate the plan on a habitual basis. We under-accept refugees. We over-accept refugees. Things happen. Congress is supposed to be notified. They do get notified. Unfortunately, the Trump administration is late with this report. It should have been done in September. So it's a report, and it is a aspirational goal. Now, that is what this is all about. I explained all this in a previous video, which apparently some people watched, most people didn't watch, and they freaked out. The number of ridiculous WhatsApp, I'm not even looking at my WhatsApp today because I know I'm going to get dozens of messages. Oh my gosh, only 7,000 refugees, oh, we're so fucked, oh my gosh, it's terrible. I know, I'm going to get emails and WhatsApp for people who claim to watch my program and never watch it. Or they would be watching this video right now and hearing the facts. Okay, so is it possible that the Trump administration will only allow 7,000, what did they say, 7,000 or 10,000 in the year? 7,500. 7,500 admissions in the coming fiscal year from 1 October, which is already underway, until 30 September. Yes, that's a very real possibility. It's also a possibility that 100,000 come in. But wait, it says the cap is 7,500. It's not a cap. It's an aspirational goal. The Trump administration's lowest level was his last year in office when he set the cap at 15,000, I think it was, and only let 15,000 come in. So let me deal with the yellow journalism of the New York Times now, okay? Tim Hill says, if you don't hear from a government website, you can't trust at this point. 95% of American media is what's left of the uniparty corrupt. Well, Tim, I would disagree with that. What I tell you can believe. And if I make a mistake or my analysis is wrong, I correct it and tell people that. So you can believe me. All right, let's get to the New York Times article. I'm going to read from it, and then I'm going to interrupt as we go along, okay? All right, so here we go. This is the story that is making the news today because this is, once again, the New York Times using anonymous sources. Nothing wrong with that, but I think it's an anonymous source, and that's it. Single source reporting. In the military, in the intelligence world, when we tell people stories, we are clear that it's single source, and we have to determine the credibility of it based on that single source. Do they have placement and access? That may very well be the case here. But the New York Times is looking for attention and clicks and selling newspapers, not getting the correct story. So let's talk about this story right now. New York Times reports today the following story. The Trump administration is said to plan to cut refugee admissions to a record low. Many of the slots would go to white South Africans and others facing unjust discrimination, according to people familiar with the matter and documents obtained by the New York Times. How does the New York Times obtain classified documents? Somebody should be going to jail. If they're not classified, they're for government use only. Somebody should be going to jail. Number one. That is not the role of the press to steal documents from the government to expose government policies and programs. It's to report on the government policies and programs. There's a distinction between the two. So, this is the first lie by giving you factual information and misleading you. Many of the slots would go to white South Africans and others facing unjust discrimination. That's correct. But why the emphasis on white South Africans? Why not simply tell the truth? South African racial minorities suffering from unjust discrimination. That's who is accepted. Indians, coloreds, and whites. But no. They want to tell you that white South Africans. Do you know why? Because they're race hustling. This is yellow journalism. The fact of the matter is, South Africans who are racial minorities qualify for this program. Not simply white South Africans. This is the shit that they do to mislead you. Because they want people to think that it's evil for white people to be refugees. Because they're bigots. Because they're frauds. Because they are so biased. Just like the people I've dealt with in a couple other media outlets recently. The Second World War ended and 35 million people were refugees. And guess what? They were all white. The Ukrainians are all white. And we brought 300,000 of them here and dumped in our neighborhoods. But apparently, white South Africans are evil and don't count like other white people. Or don't count like the poor brown people around the world. It's bigotry, it's racism. And it's perpetrated by white people. Anybody can be racist. So let's continue this article. The Trump administration plans to slash refugee admissions to a record low level in the upcoming year, reserving the bulk of the limited slots for white Afrikaners from South Africa and others facing unjust racial discrimination. President Trump is expected to lower the ceiling of refugee admissions to 7,500, a drastic decrease from the cap of 125,000 set by the Biden administration last year, according to a presidential determination dated 30 September and signed by Mr. Trump. Well, somebody is disclosing classified information. So Trump signed it on 30 September. He hasn't released it. So how do they have it? The new limit would effectively shut the door to thousands of families waiting in camps around the world and refocus a program meant to provide sanctuary for those fleeing war and famine to mostly supporting white South Africans. Now, see, that is a lie. That is not the purpose of the refugee program. It is not simply those fleeing war. Otherwise, under the Immigration and Nationality Act, South Africans could not come here. But they can come here because people who were victims of domestic abuse in certain situations, people were politically persecuted. It's not just for war. You see the second lie here by the New York Slimes. The Refugee Act, the Immigration and Nationality Act, is not solely about war. It's about persecution. Otherwise, all the Soviet dissidents couldn't have come here and sought asylum. They weren't at war, you lying sacks of horse manure. They were not at war. Nobody who escaped from Hungary in 1956 was at war and resettled in America or in Germany, in Canada. It had nothing to do with war. They were fleeing political persecution, you sacks of horsemen or New York slimes. It's not about war. It's about persecution and war. And you're liars. And it's not about white South Africans, you sacks of horse dung. It is about racial persecution. Get the story straight, stop misleading, and stop fear-mongering. That's not journalism. It's sensationalism. You might as well be the National Enquirer or the Sun and sell your paper at the till in the supermarket. Garbage, fake news, and these shitheads have billions of dollars to spew their lies. And I'm stuck on this little pathetic censorship platform. The New York Times lawsuit was set aside because it can come back because the Trump lawyers didn't write up their case well. A White House official who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss the unannounced plans for the refugee program said the limits on emissions would be final only when the administration consulted with Congress. Exactly, as the law requires, as the federal government is required to do by law by each year. There's the truth. The official said the government shutdown was preventing that consultation from happening, claimed no refugees would be admitted into the country in the fiscal year that started October 1st until Democrats and Republicans reached a deal to fund the government, which is what I cautioned. Thank you, Just Opinion, for your membership. Just Opinion. That is what I cautioned for the refugees. I've told you that there's no money. They can't spend money unauthorized, so no one's going to come in the country. People are telling me they're flying on Tuesday. Well, I hope they fly on Tuesday, but the people scheduled to fly on the 30th of September didn't go. And to my knowledge, nobody's arriving, although I have received emails from people who've arrived recently. So it's a bit confusing, but the law does not allow for that to happen. Galma says, I don't think the South African refugees care what the media call the program. They only care that more than 7,500 people express interest. And again, you're not listening to me. You're not listening. I don't care how many people express interest. It's an aspirational thing. We don't have the number of people express interest. All we know is that 70-some thousand expressed interest in the first 2 weeks, according to Marco Rubio, back at the end of May. We don't know any numbers since then. We're just taking numbers from the South African Chamber of Commerce, from other places where the information is reported. We don't know the numbers. And it really doesn't matter. It's not germane. The issue is how many people get to come here. That's what matters. And nobody has that information except the U.S. government, and they're not sharing it. Democrats in Congress said this week that Trump had already missed the deadline and called him to consult with them. And they are correct. Trump has missed the deadline. This was supposed to be done by 30 September. Despite repeat outreach from Democratic Republican committee staff, the Trump administration completely discarded its legal obligation, leaving Congress in the dark and refugees in limbo, says Jamie Scumbag Raskin from Maryland and Pramila Jalapal, the asswipe from Washington State. Senators Dickhead Durbin from Illinois and Alex Padilla of California. So they're just piling on. They don't care. They didn't ask for this report in August. They didn't want the report. They don't care because they're just going to bitch about it when it comes out. They're simply turning it into politics. But the Trump administration is remiss. They were supposed to submit this report. And I've told you that since February because I've read the previous year's reports. I know when they come out. I know what they're supposed to do. It hasn't come out yet. Mr. Trump took steps to effectively kill the refugee program when he signed executive order on the first day of his second term suspending resettlement of refugees. That's a lie. Thank you, Uffer Connor, for your membership. That is a lie. That is a lie. Trump did not take steps to end the program. He froze it because of widespread corruption during the Biden regime. And he froze it for 90 days and then he turned it back on, which the media refused to report on. But in this story, they allude to that without telling you the facts. Mark Hetfield, president of HIAS, Jewish Resettlement Agency, said the administration was eroding America's global standing by turning its back on the most vulnerable. That's a lie. Such a low refugee ceiling would break America's promise to people who play by the rules. How? Whose organization has to lay off more than half the staff. Aha! And there you have it. The grift. The money-making scam of the refugee resettlement agencies that receive $3 billion of my money, my neighbors, every year to resettle people and dump them in our neighborhoods. I am not opposed to resettling refugees who are suffering from persecution around the world. I have no objection to that. But I do have an objection from scumbag refugee resettlement agencies that are only interested in how much money they can grift from the taxpayers. They don't care about these people. They want money. They want money. That's what it's all about. The new ceiling refugee admissions will be half the previous record low of 15,000 that Trump set before leaving office in 2020. Also true. In the 2024 fiscal year, the United States resettled roughly 100,000 refugees for the first time in more than a decade. That number has withered since Trump paused the program. Also true. Figures for refugee arrivals in the government database have not been updated since he returned to office, but officials working with refugee organizations say just scores of non-South African refugees have been processed in the United States. Aha! But they have lied since February, saying that nobody is coming to the country except white South Africans, which is a lie because Indian and colored South Africans have come here, and I know that Afghans have come back to this country since the program was reinitiated after 90 days. But they don't tell you that. And the omission is the lie here. The New York Slimes is omitting the truth here instead of being objective and telling you the truth. Now, I've admitted the truth. I've told you. When they've been correct, I've told you here. But they've also lied to you and misled you with facts or omissions. When the administration froze the program in January, the White House argued that the nation did not have the resource to absorb the refugees, the record number. No, they did not. That is a lie. That is a lie from the New York Times. The administration argued that the corruption, the widespread corruption, now, since then, people have made public statements saying we can't absorb all these people. But that is not the reason the administration and Trump halted the refugee resettlement program for 90 days. If we couldn't absorb people, he would have stopped it, full stop, for the entire fiscal year. But he paused it for 90 days to review the fraud in the Biden criminal enterprise. The racketeering administration of the Biden regime. They are lying to you again. I was there. I don't forget. I'm like a freaking elephant. I remember this stuff. Exactly. Thank you, Tim Hill. It was halted because the sheer scale of fraud that was set at the time, not because we can't absorb people. This is another lie from the New York Slimes. These people just make this crap up as they go along to suit their political objective. Migrants at the border, they're not migrants. They're criminal alien invaders. However, enter the nation through a program that is separate from the State Department's roughly 40-year-old refugee program. Applicants for the refugee program must often wait years in camps overseas before coming to the United States. True. They must pass extensive background checks. True. Interviews and medical exams before they're welcome. All true. The Trump administration has argued that the program needs to be upended to align with the national interest of the United States. Not true. Not true. Illegal aliens must be upended. Not the refugee program. That's not what Trump said. The Trump administration has argued the program needs to be up. Okay, I'm sorry. For Mr. Trump, it has appeared to mean refocus the program on South African descendants of Dutch and French settlers who arrived there in the 17th century. Once again, that is a lie. First off, factually incorrect. Afrikaners are not simply descendants of Dutch and French who arrived in the 17th century. They're primarily German. And they have also other DNA, like Khoisan and Indonesian. So they're wrong. They don't know history, number one. And it's not focusing on whites. You see, once again, lying. Lying once again. After he suspended the refugee admissions in January, Mr. Trump signed executive order stating his administration would create an exception for Afrikaners from South Africa, even as Congolese families in refugee camps and those hoping to flee civil war in Sudan remain cut off. Yeah, okay. February 7th, he did announce it. And nobody came. February 7th. January 20th, he froze the program. February, March, April. 90 days. He unfroze the program. South Africans didn't come over here until May 12th. So that's another lie. The program didn't bring any South Africans to America until after the 90-day pause. Isn't that interesting? Yet another lie by the New York Times. And Congolese? What about Uyghurs? What about Rohingya? Why do you care about Congolese and Sudanese? Because they're black. That's why the New York Slimes only likes black people. Don't care about the Asians who need to come over here. The first group of Afrikaner refugees arrived on a charter flight in May. Another lie. The first group of South African refugees, including coloreds, arrived in May. A remarkably quick turnaround given that families from other nations all wait years for their chance to be vetted and brought to the United States. A true statement. They were resettled in Alabama, New York, and North Carolina, among other states. Dozens more have arrived since then, according to people familiar with the resettlement, who declined to be named because they were not authorized to speak about the matter. I can tell you it's a hell of a lot more than dozens, just from the people that contacted me, and you'll hear from one of them on Tuesday. Meanwhile, thousands of other refugees who were stuck in the process to be welcomed to the United States remain stuck overseas. True. About 130,000 conditionally approved refugees and 14,000 Iranian religious minorities who registered to come to the United States remain in limbo. They'd already met American standards for acceptance into the U.S. refugee program. Okay. That's true. What's your point? Are you saying we have an obligation to take those people? Why? Why? Look at all the people we've let in our country and look what's going on now. People running around pissing on the American flag and running around with Palestinian intifada flags. Shitting on America. We let those people in. Twin Falls, a city of 55,000 in southern Idaho, has been receiving hundreds of refugees annually. Oh, I can attest to that. I saw over 600 refugees and only about a handful of them were white. Oh, Congolese, Burundians I met. Yeah, Burundians. Why are Burundians fleeing? There's no reason for refugees to come from Burundi. There's no war in Burundi. What war are... Someone who's been here for 4 years came from... What war is in Burundi? There's no war in Burundi. The war ended a long time ago. South Africa sent peacekeepers and the VIP protection unit there. There's no reason for Burundians to be here, or Eritreans to be here, or Nigerians to be here as refugees, but they're here. They're here. They're in Twin Falls. I saw them. I met them. Why are they here? Fraud. That's why they're here. That's why Trump suspended the program. No justification for these people to be here. The refugee families fled here from countries like the DRC, Eritrea, and Sudan, and many awaited years for approval to travel to the United States. Sudan, yes, they're at war. Some of the newly arrived Afrikaners have also encountered challenges in the United States. And see, that's what we call disingenuous. All refugees encounter challenges. Coming here, not being able to speak English, having no money in your pocket, being wholly dependent on people to feed you, to get you Social Security numbers, to teach you English, to teach you how to roll your kids at school. They all suffer challenges. But you see, this is meant to throw shade on the program from a slimy media outlet known as New York Slimes. Even after Mr. Trump said March they would enter with a rapid pathway to citizenship. Well, that's nonsense. Trump's just talking out his butt. There's no rapid path to citizenship. It doesn't work unless he was referring to refugees who have a rapid path. People who come here on their own with a green card have to wait 7 years to apply to become an American citizen. 7 years. Refugees only have to wait 5 years. Those who serve as foreign nationals in the U.S. military only wait 3 years. That's a super rapid path to apply. In May, 2 Afrikaner families were resettled in Twin Falls. They represented 9 out of the first group of 59 Afrikaners who arrived on the Trump relocation. That is correct. They got that right. But you know why they got that correct? Because I harped on the 59 forever. Named that group the 59ers because they all lied and said 49. They got that correct. The resettlement agency in Twin Falls offered the Afrikaner families the same assistance it gave to other refugees. Of course, they're required to. They're under contract. But some of these organizations aren't doing that, and I've exposed them. Not publicly, but threatened to expose them publicly if they didn't do their job, the ones that weren't doing it, including case management, housing placement, and cultural orientation for the first 4 months. That's what all refugees get. In June, one Afrikaner family, that of Willem Hatzenberg, was living in a duplex next door to a Sudanese refugee family in the development of tract homes. He declined to speak to a reporter and urged her to leave without answering questions. But his partner, Carmen, said they were waiting. Partner? That's his wife. Not partner. Said they were waiting for the Social Security numbers to begin their job search. Mr. Hartzenberg cannot be reached for an update of his family circumstances. So, let me talk about what happened in Twin Falls. The New York Slimes went to the Refugee Resettlement Agency, which is where Cake Nut wanted to go. They didn't go see it. I saw it. I've been there. I've met the people that work there. They went there, the reporter, and tried to take pictures of the license plates of the vehicles in the parking lot, according to the employees there. I wasn't there. This is what they tell me. They tried to enter the building, and they were thrown out and threatened with arrest by the refugee agency, according to them, not me. Then they waited on the street for the van who took refugees to their accommodation to drop people off because they came in for classes. The only white refugees were the South Africans. So they followed them back to where they live, stalking them. The New York Times stalked this refugee family, a family that escaped horrific circumstances in South Africa where people hunted them on their farm. And they're being hunted by a New York Slimes reporter. They approached Mr. Hatzenberg, and asked to talk to him. He said, I don't want to talk to you. Please leave the property. They left. I don't know if he went to work or something like that. But then they went to the neighbor's house, a Sudanese guy, and we're talking, or to the other neighbor, and we're talking to the other neighbor, and then they talk to Kara. She did not know the reporter. The person did not identify themselves as a reporter and elicited information illegitimately from her. When she realized they were a reporter, she asked them to leave. The reporter walked away. Then when their 12-year-old daughter was playing outside, the reporter approached the 12-year-old daughter. Now imagine a 45-year-old man approaching a 12-year-old girl that he doesn't know on a street in a residential neighborhood. Can you say Chester, the molester? What is a female New York Times reporter doing approaching a minor child and then asking her questions about her family and about her refugee status? The child went and got her mother. Do you see the slimy conduct of the New York Times? They have no credibility whatsoever. I've just exposed all of their lies in this story. Their omissions, their intentional misleading efforts, their inclusion of facts, but distorting them by not giving accurate analysis. That's what's going on here. Stranger danger is right. Mr. Hartzenberg couldn't reach your comment because you people are slimy bastards who endangered the welfare and safety of his child. That's why he can't be contacted for comment. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the New York Times. This is what they do. So once again, for those of you just tuning in, let me wrap this up. As I've said previously, and I read the last report, which is from 2023 or 2024. The last report, which the Biden regime did, it's an aspirational report. It does set caps. That's correct. The cap was 125,000. We didn't reach that last year. The cap a few years ago was only 75,000, and we took 168,000 Afghans alone. And then all these Ukrainians came here. They're white people. Why are these refugee agencies helping them? Why is the New York Times up in arms about Ukrainians coming here? Because most of them are cowards. They're not fighting in the battle. They're military age, and they're here. I was in Salt Lake, and a young lady of military age is working at the check-in desk. Why isn't she fighting the war in Ukraine? Why is she here? She's a conscript age. Women are conscript in the Ukrainian military. We took 300,000 Ukrainians in this country in 3 years. 300,000 in 3 years. 300,000 in 3 years. 168,000 Afghans in 3 weeks. This report is what they intend to do. Doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. So I don't know what to tell you about where Trump's head is after offering refugee status to South Africans. Clearly, it's more than 7,500 people that want to come over here. So I don't know what to tell you. But what I will tell you is the New York Times is intentionally fear-mongering. They're trying to create dissension, just like the Sunnyside Prowler. Doing the same thing. Spreading disinformation, misinformation, BS propaganda to get people scared and frightened and up in arms. Let me just make this very clear and blunt. If you don't like the refugee program, then don't send in a statement of interest. If you don't like America, you think it's being unfair, then don't come here. Stay where you're at. That's your choice. It's your prerogative. If you think it's unfair, that's your prerogative. They can take in all those Afghans that fast. It sounds like it's unilaterally up to the executive branch. Correct, Tim, that's correct. It's not a law. The law requires that they set goals or caps, if you will. You can call them caps if you want. But we habitually exceed the caps or underperform the caps. We don't magically go, we have 40,000. Well, we need 10,000 more in September, so we meet the 40,000 goal. AI Creative says, have a great weekend, Chris. We appreciate it. Thank you for the 150 Rand Super Chat. Is my alert box off? No, it's on. No alerts came up. Playing games here. The Afghans, Ukrainians were emergency refugees, though. So, what's the point, Chief Wolf? What's the point? There's plenty of us that are very excited and wait to get this comment. I got you. Afghans were because of withdrawal and they would have been executed in the streets. No, they would have been executed in the streets. They killed all the people they're going to kill. The Ukrainians because of war. Ukrainians didn't have to come here. Poland's next door. Romania's next door. Germany is close by. There was no reason for Ukrainians to come to America at all. None of them needed to come here. We don't border Ukraine. We don't border them. Just say it's an emergency then. Yeah, exactly. Say it's an emergency. The Boers have to come. It's an emergency. So happy that you said that it's not only France and Netherlands that came to South Africa. Henrik Schoeman arrived in 1724 in the Cape from Schleswig-Holstein. Yes, I know. And Germans make up the majority of the DNA of today's Afrikaners. That's just a fact. It's a fact. People want to lie and say, I don't know what I'm talking about. Just look at the DNA studies. Marley says, agree. No one is forcing anyone to apply for programs, so if they don't have anything good to say, they must F off. Yep. South African government actively persecutes them in its law. They don't hide it. The law is set up to be a two-tier against them. Exactly, Tim. 100%. You are 100% correct. It's an emergency. Are people supposed to starve to death and die in hospitals? They do. Yeah, Tim, it's kind of like that. Exactly right. It's like the Jews in Germany in the 1930s. And we took in 100,000 plus refugees from Germany, Jewish refugees in the 1930s. And you're right. It's codified in law. So to me, it's an emergency. It's an opportunity, not a right. People must calm down and stop reading crap. Wait, carry on with your life. Patience is a virtue. Simmery, you're spot on. Charles Van Altzen's here. You missed a lot, man. And again, so your point you're making there, Chief, is that it's an emergency. Right. So the caps don't apply in emergency. So we can make the argument that South Africans an emergency too. Take 250,000 of them in 1 year. Remember that Lenin told his followers to hide their Marxist beliefs, seek out positions of power, and use their influence to slowly affect revolution. Yep. You're right, Tim. You're right. And people thought, Francis Fukuyama thought it was the end of history. He claimed it was the end of history in the 1980s. The end of history. Wrote a book. Widely ridiculed for it. It's actually not a bad book. He was trying to make a point, but the title was unfortunate. So Francis Fukuyama's book, The End of History, people thought that communism was defeated. It wasn't. It was never defeated. It just hid amongst us as we took in millions of people from Eastern Europe. Some of them were communists, came here. Aussie Cool says 1:58 in the morning on a Sunday. Oh, okay. Did you watch the Wallabies game? Disappointing. New York Times had a good 56-year run before it was infiltrated by communists in 1920. True, Tim Hill. Welcome here, Tim. Your comments are pretty much spot on. Might have just hired some for Palestine to write the news reports. Oh, my goodness. He's undoing 60 years of concerted effort to subvert and destroy this country slowly but surely. That's why they hate him so deeply. Exactly right. That's what Trump is doing. And I tried to do that when I ran for office last year, but I quickly discovered the Republican Party is venal, evil, and corrupt. Wasted $22,000 of my life savings running for the state legislature when there was no reason for me to run because the sitting member in that seat lied, as did the Republican Party, saying they weren't backing any candidate because they were all strong. And then surreptitiously supported that candidate and directed $80,000 plus of funding to that candidate for a state race that people never spend more than $25,000 to $50,000 max. Directed all the funding to that candidate and then went around behind the other candidates' backs and got the power brokers to vote for that candidate. Candidate also illegally had high school students signing petitions and then boldly claimed in a debate, the one debate we had, that I went out and I got X number of signatures. You didn't get any signatures, buddy. Your illegal high school teenagers got those signatures. Whereas the rest of us actually went around and got signatures on our own. And also, the corrupt Republican precinct captains failed to inform the other candidates of a signature gathering day to gather signatures for Trump, for the sitting legislator who was running for the Senate, but told that guy, and that guy went there and got signatures, while the rest of us were left in the cold. Corrupt politics. That's why good moral people don't run for office very often. Actually, the Cape was annexed twice, Aussie Cool. It was annexed in 1795. They lost it, and then they regained it in 1806. Chief Wolf says, mine are descendants of Dutch. Yeah, I hear you, Chief Wolf, but I'm willing to bet when you look in your timeline, you got some that aren't Dutch. I'll bet you. The logic is that everyone deserves the prosperity of America. Everyone on earth does. It's madness. No, people need to earn their way in life. Dutch East India Country, a company established. Yeah, yes, we know this. I'm a historian. I've covered this. New York Times, radical Fabian socialist. Yep, think the entire world has a right to live in the U.S. Exactly. They're giving away our country. Great how you break it down, says Alan. Why can't people read and see the same? Pause and analyze. Exactly. Nikki Boswell says, thank you for having our backs all the time, Colonel. What do you think of the impact will be on flights with regards to President Trump's message to Sunday's deadline in Gaza? I don't think that has any impact on South Africa. The impact on South Africa and flights is the budget being approved. Until the budget's approved, there isn't money for that stuff. Although I have people that come over and have shown me the documents, they had to make a loan through International Organization of Migration. But the problem is that it's not necessarily the flight being paid for, it's the people that have to work. Are they furloughed? Are they still working the cases? From all reporting I've gotten anecdotally from people in the process, RSC and the Americanas are still screening people and forwarding the information to the Americans. The question is, are there still Americans working this case? I do have some sources that indicate that the PRM department, the State Department, will not be furloughed. I cannot confirm that through independent sources, but only through government sources. So I've been speculative and I haven't done a video on that. So I believe that the U.S. people will still be working it. But then the question becomes, if they're working it, do they have money to process people? So I don't have an answer for you that. Paul says, thank you so much for all your broadcasts, rugby and normal daily ones. Great. Appreciate it. Have a night's rest and Bulls game. You need to. Okay. Thank you. What else? Because Whitey doesn't vote Democrat. Exactly. Well, actually, plenty of whites vote Democrat. Otherwise, Democrats would never get any seats since whites are 75% of the population, despite the lies by the media. I love Colonel Wyatt. He's straightforward and honest. This is the only person I'm listening to with regards. Thank you, Ronell. Wade says, I see Cape Town is petition for interviews. I don't know what you're talking about. What is that? What is that? Danny Whitfield, welcome to you. KZN is being sawed off the South African, pushed out to sea. Yep. Anyway, so I agree with you on the agency selling themselves as NPO, but do not practice this. Exactly. Literally just don't even regard anything Democrats say at this point, like taking Tokyo Rose seriously on a ship sailing to Asia. Exactly. Please stop panicking. Yep. It's the latest left-wing tactic. Pretend to want a thing, but then act concerned and upset that Trump didn't do it well enough. Spot on. They're also fear-mongering about Trump doing amnesty. Exactly. Exactly. Slowly banning programming and making the move to woodwork, cabinet maker. Okay. All right. I think I've caught up on the chat, except for the new ones came in since I was looking at that. It's hard to describe the extent to which this outlet just lies outright, makes things up out of thin air. Anonymous sources that don't exist are familiar with the matter. Exactly. What about the embassy website? What's going on with the embassy website? Let me go there. za.usembassy.gov. This time, scheduled passport and visa transit service in the United States will be continued during the lapse in appropriations. Okay. Good. Okay. Okay, I see no new updates, but I'll go to the pages for the refugees and see if that's been updated. 8th September has not been updated, so I don't know where you're getting that. You're getting it from Twitter? It's not on the embassy website. Chief Wolf says, anonymous source that is familiar with the matter claiming something negative about the Trump administration has been a thing they've done since first term. So common it became a meme. Well, I'm not denying it may be very well be true, but this same New York Times claimed 2 months ago in August that the cap was 40,000 and 30,000 reserved for white South Africans. Did that come to fruition? No. Now they're saying it's 7,500. What will it be next week? We're deporting people to South Africa, so it's negative? May very well be 7,500. I'm not denying that. But I'm also not lying to you and misleading you and telling you that that's all that's going to come over here. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. Anyway, folks, there you have it. The New York Times. Shame on them. Shame on them. I did look up a bunch of other news. Let me run through that very quickly here. The Springboks are the rugby championship back-to-back champions, and they backed into it with a pathetic performance. A sloppy first half, terrible play, and terrible last 15 minutes of the game. But from 40 minutes to 65, they were fantastic. And they win 29-27 over the Pumas, finishing at 4-2 with 19 points on the log, the same as the All Blacks, but they have 57 points to the positive. The All Blacks were 8 points positive, so they win by default based on points instead of outright at 20 points on the log. Springboks, congratulations. The South African Medical Association, I think that's what it is, South African Medical Association and its relationship with the Israeli Medical Association over the arrest of criminals who were impeding maritime traffic. So the South African Medical Association has zero credibility. It's not a medical association. It's a political actor. It's a political actor. Gift of the Givers had a traumatic hijacking in Khayelitsha. Gift of the Givers team is traumatized after being hijacked at gunpoint in Khayelitsha and driven around for an hour, where they were actively being involved in social uplift and disaster research projects. Their sponsor 4x4 vehicle was cut off on Friday night at a stop street by a blue Toyota Yaris. A Yaris? You had a van pulled over by a Yaris? Run over the Yaris. I mean, I could stomp on a Yaris and crush it. Those are tiny little cars. Wow. Interesting. Thank you, Liesel Barnard, for subscribing. Some people have been contacted in person for interviews in Pretoria next week. Yes, I believe it is, Loretta, and I believe people will be flying, but we know for a fact that some people didn't fly because of the shutdown. But it might have been an overreaction by the U.S. government. I'm not sure. What's all this? What are you guys talking about? WhatsApp groups. What's going on with WhatsApp groups? And what is Anna saying about $5,000? Where's that coming from? I read no aid were found on the Greta list. Yeah, exactly. There's no aid. They're just malcontents. Somebody, okay. Share it to this group to a supporting solar after you want to be waiting for processing a summer suspended over fake news. They're buying them up, encouraging them not to ban the program. I have no idea what you're saying, Karen. Yes, that's right. Fitnot. The WhatsApp groups where people comment just used as a dumpster fire to spread misinformation. No, Leona, you're right. They had a bad game. It was quite sloppy. That's not going to work against France or against Ireland. It might not work against Italy. As the gulags and mass murders were happening, New York Times had a reporter over there. He was shown a Potemkin village and reported uncritically because he himself was a Marxist. Spot on. And then in the 1980s, they made this BS film called Red, starring Warren Beatty, to glorify that American reporter went over there and lied about it. Yep. Yeah, I'll take a bet that more than 7,500 refugees come over from South Africa this year. Yep. My missus knows that they try to pull you over. Don't stop. Never drive a small car. Exactly. Nobody should get into Bitcoin unless they're next. Yeah, Chief Wolf, we agree on that one. We agree on that one. I would stay away from Bitcoin. But you guys do what you want with your money. Not my place to tell you, but Bitcoin, you might as well buy tulips or pork bellies. It's speculation. Box of rice for the whole of Gaza. What? Hey, Gina, what's going on? Robert Mugabe Jr. was arrested for possession of drugs. The former Zimbabwean president's son has appeared in court in Harare in a charge of alleged drug possession. He was arrested Wednesday by police who spotted the vehicle traveling the wrong way down a one-way street. 2 small sachets of cannabis were allegedly found in a sling bag worn by Mugabe. Of course, his sons are druggies, no doubt. Babies' deaths in the Cameroon show how USAID cuts curtail malaria fight. I'm sorry? It's our responsibility to pay for the medical care of Cameroonians? Apparently. But in this heart-wrenching story from the Times Live, a 9-month-old baby, Mohammed, burnt with fever for 3 days before his family took him to the closest health center in northern Cameroon, but it was too late. He died of malaria that day. Well, that's terrible. That's terrible. Why did you wait 3 days? His death was part of a spike in malaria fatalities that local health officials attribute to foreign aid cuts by the U.S. Where's the African Union? Why isn't the African Union providing that assistance? Why aren't Cameroon's government providing the assistance? Why aren't the neighbors providing assistance? Why is it my responsibility to provide assistance? Before the cuts, Mohammed might have been diagnosed earlier by one or more than 2,000 U.S.-funded community health workers who would travel over rough dirt roads to reach the region's remotest village. Why are the roads dirt? Why aren't they paved? Cameroon has been independent for 60 years. Why haven't they paved the roads? Reuters traveled to northern Cameroon, where the U.S. had played a leading role in the malaria response for nearly a decade. So, if we hadn't got involved 10 years ago, it wouldn't be our fault? But because we got involved 10 years ago and people sucked off our teat and didn't become independent and resourceful in their own right, it's our fault? I'm sorry. Did I miss something here? What did I miss here? This story is based on interviews of more than 20 doctors, nurses, community health workers, residents, and former U.S. officials involved in the malaria program. Mohammad's father, sorghum banana farmer Haji Madu Goni, is mourning his son he had hoped would one day escape poverty. I felt so sad about my loss. I hope no one suffers from this malaria again, the 30-year-old told Reuters as he sat outside his home, his wife next to him holding prayer beads. Since there's hardship here and people don't have the means, we hope aid comes. Oh, so you just hope that people will take care of you. You're not resourceful for your own right. You see? Teach a man to fish. He'll learn to feed himself. Feed a man, he becomes dependent and drags you down. Only in emergencies or disasters should people be fed and clothed and taken care of. The rest of the time, it's their responsibility. Thank you, Truff Providence for New York Times. I don't blame you. Yep. I think people want to tell you there is a Cape Town WhatsApp group that want to make a petition for interviews in Cape Town. Oh, I don't know about Sumery, and I don't care. You can make whatever petitions and change.org and WhatsApp groups. And if you think the U.S. government's going to listen to that, then, not you, Sumery, but whoever. That's on you. That ain't going to happen. They're not going to listen to you. They're not going to listen to you. They're not going to listen to you. And the WhatsApp groups that I have, there's only 2 for the refugees. And neither one of them can anybody comment except my moderators and me. No one else can comment. So you don't get all the nonsense in there. And we just publish my videos. And there's one Telegram group for that. Now, I have other groups, but that's for news and for sharing because people like to chat. Well, the world reacts to Donald Trump's Gaza plan. Global reactions included key mediators to Hamas's partial acceptance of Trump's peace plan. Late on Friday, the Palestinian group said it was ready to release all remaining captives and hand over power to other Palestinians, but other elements of the proposal needed further negotiation. They don't want to disarm because the terrorists don't like to give up their weapons. Qatar, the Gulf nation which has been central negotiations, has welcomed Hamas's announcement. We also affirm our support for the statements made by the president calling for an immediate ceasefire to facilitate the safe and swift release of hostages. And of course, the U.S. is accused of facilitating war when we've demanded that Israel actually end the war. See, people don't tell the truth. Egypt and other key players said hope for positive development, that it would work with the Arab states, U.S. and European countries. Turkey's president for life, the coup plotter, Erdogan, welcomed Hamas's positive reaction, said the group was ready for peace. Hamas has shown, as it's done many times before, that it's ready for peace. You see, he's a fraud. Hamas has never tried for peace. And the dictator for life, Erdogan, who falsified a coup to imprison tens of thousands of intellectuals, bankers, lawyers, military, police, teachers, professors. Yeah, anyway. Palestinian authorities, Mahmoud Abbas said he welcomed Hamas' response, underscored critical next steps. The Palestinian Islamic Jihad said the statement expressed the position of other Palestinian groups that participated responsibly in the consultations. Jordan welcomed Hamas's positive response to Trump's plan, calling an important step to end the war. Pakistan says Hamas' response to Trump is a welcome step. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has encouraged by Hamas' statement and urged parties to seize the opportunity to bring the tragic conflict to an end. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has praised Trump's leadership in his peace efforts. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim offered a cautionary tone. The peace plan presented by the United States is not perfect, and we even disagree with much of it. However, our current policy is to save lives. It's not a sign of agreement. Well, that's because you want the terrorists to stay in power, Malaysia. Shame on you. France's Emmanuel Macron said the release of all hostages ceasefire in Gaza are within reach. Spain, while welcomed the latest developments, said there are many obstacles. The fundamentalist organization Hamas must be disarmed. We want the Israeli army to definitively cease all military operations. Well said. Ireland said this moment to end the unconscionable human suffering must be grasped by all. Stop the bombing, silence the guns, end the famine, and allow a surge of humanitarian aid into Gaza. And meanwhile, listen to Tommy McGregor and get all the fake asylum people out of Ireland before your country's gone. Britain's Keir Starmer, who facilitates things, said Hamas acceptance a significant step forward. Canada welcomes commitments from Hamas to relinquish power and release all remaining hostages living and deceased. The European Union also commented, saying Ursula von der Leyen said that Hamas's response was encouraging. There you go. For solo refugees wanting to go but keep our spirits up, so there's a lot of lighthearted chat. Well, that's fine, Karen. After seeing the New York Times article, someone leave the program. Well, there you go. There you go. See, that's because they listen to bullshit. We should listen to the truth. We should listen to the truth and real analysis. Every now and then, it sounds like a war on the farms around my area and gunfire from invaders. That's terrible. 7 October was a show for peace. Exactly. Erdogan is a scumbag. He's a scumbag since 2015. I've been saying it for years. Some of them just add to our fear by acting like entitled little, and could make things more difficult. Those who really fear for life. No, it's all an orchestrated campaign by white liberals and black supremacists in South Africa. Takahashi is elected as the head of Japan's ruling party. She will be the next prime minister of Japan. Is this the first female prime minister for Japan? I think that might be the case. Victory makes her Japan's first female party president, almost certainly its first female prime minister. There you go. Newly elected leader of Japan's Liberal Democratic Party, Sanae Takahashi, celebrates after winning the leadership election on October 4th, today. The 64-year-old staunch conservative and vocal China hawk defeated her moderate rival by 185 to 156 votes in a runoff. The victory makes her Japan's first female party president, almost certainly its first female prime minister since the LDP remains the largest bloc in parliament. Well, congratulations to her. She's an admirer of Maggie Thatcher and a protege of the late Shinzo Abe. Well, then I like her. I like her. Trump says anyone who burns the American flag will be immediately arrested. I'm not really sure how he's going to pull that off. President Trump said on October 3rd, anyone caught burning the American flag will be immediately arrested and face imprisonment for 1 year under executive order he signed. The problem is that he doesn't have authority on the executive order. His 25 August executive order, says desecrating is uniquely offensive and provocative. It's a statement of contempt, hostility, and violence against our nation. Clearest possible expression of opposition to political union that preserves our rights, liberty, and security. Well, he's right about that, but his executive order doesn't trump the Constitution. Supreme Court ruling 1989 in Texas versus Johnson overturned the law and declared that the act of flag desecration is a protected free speech right. But Trump's order states that the Supreme Court's rulings on the First Amendment do not protect acts of American flag desecration that are likely to incite imminent lawless action or actions amounting to fighting words. Well, he's trying to call it inciting violence and not free speech. He might be right. We'll see. Starbucks closing stores and cutting jobs. Ooh, that's not good. The thing about a group in Cape Town wanting to start a petition for interviews to be held in Cape Town is going to bite them. This is going to endanger all of us in the program. I think he's just trying to force a Supreme Court battle. You are correct, Tim Hill. That's the whole purpose of the executive order. Same with birthright citizenship. He wants to go before the Supreme Court. That's why he did it. He knows he doesn't have the authority. Phoenix, apart from electricity just going off, there's prolonged outage as well in the area. It's been 5 days now. Many are on the program for exactly. Many are in it for free immigration, not because their lives are in jeopardy. Some anyway. I don't know many. I agree with the Colonel WhatsApp group. Some in another group, and whining is sickening. Yeah, the whine. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I'll tell you what. It's not a good look for Afrikaners, for South Africans, for colors, for Indians. It's not a good look. And if you saw the stuff that I get, which I don't share because I don't want to harm people personally, but the whining that I get from some people and the distortions and I've been screwed and this is not how you treat people. No, you screwed yourself. You put yourself in that situation. No one told you to sit in a place an extended period. If you don't have information, go home. Not to mention, folks, the horror stories that I'm told by people. You guys don't know this. I mean, you really don't know this. The stuff that I'm put through. And then I got the hate wankers attacking me. All because I bring you the facts and accurate analysis. And I don't even make six-figure income. I only make a five-figure income. I make a four-figure income from doing this. It's not much money. And I'm not doing it for the money. But the abuse that I get and the horror stories that I have to hear about women being assaulted in their lives, what's happened to them. And it isn't one time I've been told this story. It isn't two times. Why are you laughing, Carol Ann? What's funny? Or is that tears? When you phone the White House, Karen Levitt voicemail answers blaming Democrats for shutdown. Did you phone the White House, Philip Holtz? I haven't. Yep. Oh, your money. Are you laughing about it? Esmari, no, I don't. People will give me crap. It's just what they're up to. That's their deal. Must live a nightmare. I don't live a nightmare, but I mean, people don't appreciate what happens here. You don't. The abuse, the horror stories people have, the moaning, the complaining. I do get lots of nice things from lots of people who say nice things and are very complimentary, and that makes it all a lot easier. But look, I'm a rock. I can handle it. I'm just trying to make the point here that there's a lot of people that really have their heads up their backside. Folks, I have to wrap up here, unfortunately, because on Rugby Ascendant, which you'll be directed to if you want to watch it, I have the Bulls hosting Leinster at Loftus Versfeld in just a couple minutes. So I got to switch over to that. All right. Thanks for being here. Be sure to hit the like button if you haven't done it. 334 likes. Could have gotten a lot more than that. A little bit of super chat revenue. Thank you for that. Haven't slept through the night in 10 years. PTSD. Yeah, I think most South Africans have PTSD, black, white, and brown. It's true. All right, guys, thanks. I'll see some of you on Rugby Ascendant in just a couple minutes. Thank you for being here. I got to sign out of here. I got to sign out of there, sign back in here, sign back in there, and get it started. So thank you all so much. Cheers, and have a lovely day. Bye-bye. Yeah, the clouds are gathering.